Long time no speak, everybody. Welcome to 2015. It's really nice to be back. And today's installment is going to be a comparison of two famous African Americans during the turn of the century. So these men, Booker T. Washington and W.E.B. DuBois, and no, I did not mispronounce it. I have checked, I have verified, it is DuBois, were leaders during this New South era, or this time of the late 1800s and early 1900s, which many people have written about recently as this book indicates, slavery by another name. But the Jim Crow era of segregation and all the voting restrictions and discrimination, as well as the horrific lynchings that were taking place, were during this time period, and African American leaders were grappling with how they should respond to it. So these two men, Booker T. Washington and W.B. Du Bois, had very different opinions on how African Americans should deal. We'll start with Booker T. Washington. Booker T. Washington, many people think, is one of the most famous, if not the most famous, black men of the time. He was born a slave, so he lived in Virginia at first, then West Virginia, and his family was enslaved. Now, he remembers the day that the Emancipation Proclamation was passed, and his family told him that they were free. He then worked incredibly hard to educate himself. He walked miles and miles to get to schools, and is so successful that he will found a school himself, the Tuskegee Institute. He gets money and funding from white philanthropists and people that are interested in helping African Americans, and this school is going to help train African Americans to get skills. He really does focus on vocational education. In his Atlanta Compromise speech, which was in 1895, he makes the argument that education and economic progress were the most important means for African Americans to improve. So they really should get a skill, learn a trait, and become educated. And eventually you will get your equality. His autobiography, Up From Slavery, focuses on, obviously, the struggles that he had to overcome to get to his point. And what is very, very significant in his life, he will be the first African American who's invited to formally dine at the White House. Theodore Roosevelt made that invitation. Now, Frederick Douglass went to the White House to meet Abraham Lincoln, but that was not a formal dining invitation. And in 2008, when John McCain lost the presidential election, in his concession speech, he made a reference to Booker T. Washington being invited to the White House, as now we have Barack Obama, our first African American, in the presidency. If I knew how to embed a video into a video, I would do that, but maybe I'll just put it on the YouTube channel separately. So, and I don't know what I did wrong here. All right, little rusty. So, Booker T. Washington, here's his general philosophy on how African Americans should be dealing with this. He kind of accepted the racial subordination that blacks were subjected to at this time. And he really believed blacks were it would be more beneficial for them to prove their worthiness, to prove that they deserve equality, to work hard, get a skill, become educated. He focused on education, self-help, economic progress, and he believed that by being patient, see if the pen works. Whoa, that's not what I was expecting. By being patient and going slow, eventually equality would be reached. So his philosophy, again, is the more patient approach. You can look at some of his quotes here. Associate yourself with people of good quality, for it is better to be alone than in bad company. And success is to be measured not so much by the position that one has reached in life as by the obstacles which he has overcome while trying to succeed. So now that you hopefully have an understanding of Booker T. Washington's philosophy, we can move on to Du Bois. W.E.B. Du Bois was not ever a slave. W.B. Du Bois was born somewhat comfortably in Massachusetts, and he is going to rise to be the first African American to earn a Ph.D. from Harvard University. He wrote many books. One of his most famous is called Souls of Black Folk. And he's going to be the founder of the NAACP. Now, this is a group that is still around today, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. As this was sparked by terrible race, I don't want to call them race riots, it was really just racial attacks on black people in Springfield, Illinois. This is what the reason was for the founding of that group. He was very critical of Woodrow Wilson, who allowed segregation in the government. Woodrow Wilson actually showed a very racist movie by D.W. Griffith in 1915 that sparked a lot of controversy. It's called The Birth of a Nation. But W.B. Du Bois's philosophy at first was in agreement with Washington. I would say somewhat. He initially did believe in the importance of education and being more patient, but he really then came to the conclusion that fighting, aggressive court action, agitation really was the only way for African Americans to earn equality. So he strongly condemns the lynching that was taking place and these Jim Crow segregation laws, the discrimination, hopefully we're all familiar with Plessy versus Ferguson, and that Supreme Court decision that said segregation was constitutional, separate but equal. So he really is far more aggressive in demanding equal rights. And he argued that you can't have economic independence until you have political equality, social equality, civic equality. Voting is critical. We all know how blacks suffered from the poll taxes and the literacy test and the grandfather clauses. So Du Bois's philosophy was much more aggressive. So I hope that this, and I did keep it under 10 minutes, I hope that this comparison of these two men is clear to you so that we can do an activity in class. Again, Booker T. Washington, far more of the accommodationist, far more passive and patient in his approach to dealing with discrimination, whereas Du Bois was much more aggressive and the agitator and the one that wanted to demand equality immediately. All right, I kept it under 8 minutes actually, but now let's see if I can figure out how to convert it again. Guys, have a great night, and I will see you in class tomorrow.